And what I will use for color is I'm going to go with a cobalt. And I drew down a stringer in a previous segment, so I'm just going to use my cobalt stringer. And I'm going to lay these colors down, and I do it in an offset fashion. I do it at the edge of each of these white cells, these reflective screens, right at the edge there. 1, 2, 3. There's no right and wrong. This is how I do it, and this achieves a certain result. Somebody else might put these color dots in the middle and get a very pleasing, different result. So now we go to the other side and heat those little cobalt dots up, not completely, but just enough to keep them happy from popping off, because they are essentially only tack fused on. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And sometimes I go back to the first one and add a little bit of mass, because when I started I wasn't sort of in the flow. And now I melt these guys in. I have a fairly tame flame here, so take your time. You can go faster, you can be more aggressive, but sometimes it's just nice to go at sort of a mellow pace. Breathe. Don't forget to breathe. Don't forget your posture. Good ergonomics. I'm not an ergonomic expert, but it seems to me it involves straight lines rather than lots of crooked angles that are very stressful. And of course, using sort of armrests when you can. There are a number of different products on the market. Anyways, let's see what we've got so far with just black, white dots, and offset cobalt. Pretty, huh? So now we're going to add another color. I have a lot of white canvas still left because of the way I offset the original laydown of cobalt. So I'm going to put a medium emerald over, but not right over the original blue dot laydown, but offset to that, sort of above it, like a cone, almost like a flame, on more of the white zone. Sort of 50-50, half white, half cobalt. 2, 3. This is a digital bead. It has 10 overall cells, 5 on each side, mimicking human hands. 5 times 2 is a great number. Sometimes I do hexagonals, so that'll be 12 cells in all. Sometimes if it's a smaller bead, you might only want 8 overall cells, 4 to a side. The minimum for this approach would be, what would it be? 2 on each side, so a total of 4. 3 is also good, but 3 is a little harder to put down on each side because you have to trisect the circle into 3 120-degree segments, which is a little bit tricky to estimate. So let's go back and do this on the other row. Right in the middle there, 50-50, half on the white and half on the cobalt. We melt that in. Slowly, gently. There's no need to rush. And if you didn't put enough green on, or whatever your second color was, you can add more. I've chosen tinted colors here, so transparents, for obvious reason. I have a white background on my reflective screen. I mean, the bead itself is black to begin with, and nothing would show up against black except opaque colors. But when you put down white, then you have the luxury of getting down your tints, and in this instance I'm only using tints as my overlay colors. But they will show up because the light's going to go into the bead and then bounce on back to the human eye. So we're getting there. And the color of the hot bead will be actually richer than you can see on camera right now. It'll be more like the finished cool bead. This is a cool bead. Don't be scared. Don't ever touch a hot bead. But anyways, will get better and better color when this bead returns back to Earth and gets to be room temperature. I'm going to now put black. This is sort of a nice little finishing touch. I'm going to put black on the edges to kind of create sort of a focal point and more visual interest. So heat your bead. I have black stringer right here. I'm going to put one there, another there, and these are completely offset. These are almost barely touching the tinted zone, and they're much more so oriented towards the base color, which is also black. So it will reunite black with black and create a very interesting sort of finished edge. So let that settle down, and then we'll repeat the process on the remaining side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can bulk them up. The more you put of black or any occluding color at the edges, the more it will bleed into the tinted zone and sort of take away your design area, your color area. So you have to be really careful with these last stages to not overwhelm the color field with black. It is also the case, though, that the strategic and judicious use of these edging techniques frame the color zone, and so although you're diminishing what can be seen, the framing more than makes up for it, and it would be an instance where less is more. And so a thin band of color in the middle now is much more precise and appealing than if there was color everywhere. Let this bead settle down for a second. I can remove my stringer residue when I did the emergency stringer. Get that little piece off. I'm going to get a marver ready because I'm going to want to maybe make this a little more squat, but we have the makings of a really pretty bead here. Sort of a cool rainbow. And what's nice about this technique with the offsetting process is that you get a graduation, a gradation of color. So you have sort of a feathering effect. Let me put this back in the flame. And when the bead has been resting out for a while, you might dance it in the flame a little bit at first rather than just full bore heating it to prevent it from thermal shock. So to make this more squat and more into a barrel, heat it up. Make multiple passes if you need to. Make sure your tools are clean. You don't want to introduce impurity to the surface of the bead. I love this hefty, flat marver. It has a nice solid feel to it. And I got this from artco.com, Malcolm at artco.com. And no, I'm not getting paid by him for any of these tool references. I should, in the interest of full and fair disclosure, mention, though, that I do have business dealings with Arrow Springs and France. They give me instructor discounts when I order glass and tools from them. And I enjoy promoting them. They are both good companies. C&R Lou is another good company here in the Bay Area, in Richmond. I get instructor discounts from most all of these places. I have an active teaching schedule where I teach live at the Mendocino Art Center during the summer, at Feather River Art Camp near Quincy, also during summer, and also through the city of Oakland, where I teach quarterly local classes, sometimes on weekends and sometimes on a Tuesday or Thursday night. So that would be for the city of Oakland here in the Bay Area. So if you have a trip planned here, you want to take a class, I'd love to have you. You can find me on my website, harlanbeads.com, harlanglass.com, and email me about upcoming classes. This is kind of a gorgeous little bead here. Nice sort of disc, flat disc. Very precise, like a tambourine. And there's really no, there's no telling where it should stop. I have a nice black border that's pretty even on both sides. There's always going to be slight asymmetries, I suppose. You can strive for perfection, but these are handmade beads. Some people achieve it more often than others. You'll develop your own style. Each of us has our own vision inside of us as to what we like and what we can do. And the important thing here is to not necessarily copy anybody, but use these different techniques that are out there in the public domain that have been out and around for thousands of years, and make them your own by adding a twist or having it be a certain way, just the way you envision, you want. And get your skill set up so that you can improvise and really explore using these fundamental dotting techniques. And in this instance, there was that occlusion technique. And to kind of just highlight what I'm talking about, you'll notice how the black dot has penetrated into the color zone and created sort of a delta. And then we also have the sort of triangular Harlequin zigzag effect as well. The marvering has caused there to be waves in the separation line. So if you were to be less aggressive on the marvering or wait until the bead surface was cooler, you would have less spreading or smearing of the design. Because I did a lot of marvering, I think it's incumbent on me to kind of heat this baby up really fast, get that heat soaking in. You'll lose some of your definition, but you want a happy bead. You want a bead that's going to survive and not crack, that doesn't have any structural defects built into it by virtue of having cooled it so much and never heating it or homogenizing and raising everything up to be in equilibrium. So now we're at the flame anneal stage. We've rounded the edges a little bit, so it's very appealing, a very pleasing little bead, little drum bead. This would be very nice on a kind of heavy gauge Italian serpentine snake necklace, or a cord for that matter. Sometimes I put end pieces on little silver rings that bracket it. Just simple, and I thought, there's simple is good. It's hard to improve, and this is the oldest jewelry style in the world. I don't know if it's 100,000, 150,000 years old, but bead on a string, on a piece of seaweed, on a piece of animal sinew, that's the oldest thing, and it's still just very beautiful on a person. Just one single bead. So I'm a big proponent on the specialness and uniqueness of the bead, and I think that it kind of parallels what we do as humans, the uniqueness and specialness of each of us and our individuality. So this bead is ready to go into the kiln. Kiln temperature says 960, which is just about right. And I've waited about 6 or 7 seconds. And boom, into the kiln it goes. And we have now concluded the Harlequin bead segment.